My dad was standing at the kitchen counter when I walked in, and I knew immediately something was wrong. He had that look, the one where his jaw is tight and his eyes go flat, like he's already decided how the conversation ends before it starts. He was holding a folder. My folder. "Sit down," he said. I sat. He opened the folder and spread the papers across the granite-like evidence at a trial. Course withdrawal confirmations. A letter from the dean's office dated 3 months prior. A bank statement I didn't know he had access to. He'd been digging, methodically, the way he does everything. "You want to explain this?" I looked at the papers. I thought about lying. I'd been lying for 2 years, actually. Small lies, lies by omission, the kind where you just don't correct someone's assumption. My parents assumed I was still enrolled in the MBA program at Georgetown. I had withdrawn the semester after I started. I hadn't told them because I already knew what would happen, and I had needed the time. "I left the program," I said. "I've been working on something else." My mother was standing in the doorway by then. She'd been listening from the hall. She does that. Positions herself slightly out of the room so she can claim she wasn't part of it. But she's always part of it. "Working on what?" my dad said. "Because I've been paying your rent for 2 years. I've been telling everyone at the firm that my daughter is getting her MBA. I told your uncle at Christmas. I know what you told people. Don't what? Don't get smart with me." He closed the folder. "I want to know what you've been doing. 2 years. Where's my money gone?" And that's the thing about that moment, the thing I've thought about every day since. He said my money, not our money, not the money he gave me, not even just the money. My money. Like I was a branch office of him. Like the rent checks were an investment he expected returns on, not support he was giving his daughter because he loved her. I took a breath. "I've been building a company," I said. Some context, because it matters. My dad is a senior partner at a corporate law firm in Philadelphia. He's been there for 26 years. His name is on the wall. When I was growing up, dinner conversations were case studies, not literally. He couldn't discuss clients, but the structure of them was. Everything was an argument to be won. Every opinion I had was something to be cross-examined. I don't think he meant it cruelly. It was just the only mode he had for engagement. I think he genuinely believed that was how you raised a sharp kid. My mother is an interior designer. Successful, well-connected, the kind of woman who knows everyone in 3 counties and remembers every detail about them. She loves me. I've never doubted that. But her love has always come packaged with a specific vision of what my life should look like. And when the vision and the reality diverge, she goes very quiet in a way that's worse than yelling. I'm the eldest. I have a younger brother, 2 years behind me, who plays by the rules. He went to Penn. He's at a consulting firm now. He calls home every Sunday. He is the proof of concept for their parenting. I was always the variable that wasn't behaving. I studied communications in undergrad. They tolerated it because I got into Georgetown for business school, which felt like a course correction to them. What they didn't know was that the whole time I was applying to Georgetown, I was also building something on the side, a content strategy consultancy. Just me and a laptop, working with small brands who needed someone to think clearly about how they talk to people. I was good at it, better than I expected to be. By the time I started at Georgetown, I had 4 paying clients and was billing more per month than most of my classmates would make starting salaries. I lasted 1 semester. Not because I failed. I was doing fine academically. I left because I ran the numbers, and the numbers were obvious. The degree would cost me 2 more years and $110,000. The business I already had was growing faster than I could service it alone. Staying in the program was the irrational choice. So I left. I didn't tell my parents because I knew my dad would see it as reckless. He comes from a generation where credentials are the whole point. The degree is the thing, not what you do with it. Explaining that I had a functioning business would not have mattered to him. He would have said I could build the business after I finished the program. He would have made it logical and reasonable and completely missed the point. So I kept the lie small and kept my head down and grew the company. By the time he found that folder, I had 11 full-time clients, 2 contractors who worked with me regularly, and a retainer structure that was generating predictable revenue. I had also, 6 months earlier, been approached by a private equity firm that had noticed our work for one of their portfolio companies. They wanted to talk about acquisition. I didn't tell my dad any of this at the kitchen counter. I said I'd been building a company and watched his face do the thing it does. A controlled collapse, like a building being demolished floor by floor. A company, he repeated. A content consultancy, brand strategy, messaging, narrative development. I have clients I've been working with for over a year. You dropped out of Georgetown to do marketing. He said, marketing the way other people say fraud. It's not really, it's more strategic than, I don't care what you call it. He picked up the folder and tapped it against the counter. You lied to us. For 2 years, you took our money and you lied to our faces. I didn't take your money for the program. I used it for rent while I built something. I was going to tell you when. When what? When it failed? When you needed us to bail you out? My mother made a small sound from the doorway. Not words, just the sound that means, please stop, addressed at no one in particular. It hasn't failed, I said. It's doing well, really well. I was going to tell you once the deal. I don't want to hear about a deal. He set the folder down. I want you to hear me very clearly. You don't come back here and ask us for anything. You made your choices. You live with them. I'm done. I looked at my mother. She looked at the floor. You're serious, I said. You want to be an entrepreneur. He said the word like it was in quotation marks, like it was a costume. Then be one. On your own. That's what entrepreneurs do. I stood up. I picked up my bag. I thought about saying something. There were a lot of things available to say in that moment, but I looked at his face and understood that he'd already decided, and that anything I said would just be evidence he'd use to feel more justified. Okay, I said. I drove back to my apartment in D.C., and I sat on my couch for a long time without turning on any lights. I want to be honest about what that felt like, because I think people expect the story to be, I walked out and I was fine. I had money. I was vindicated. That's not what it felt like. It felt like something tearing. Even when you know the relationship is broken, even when you've been bracing for the break for years, when it actually happens, there's a specific kind of grief that doesn't care about the logic. I cried for 3 days. I called my best friend and couldn't explain why I was crying because I'd known this was coming, and I'd been almost relieved when it finally did, and I was still devastated. Then I got up and I called my attorney. The acquisition closed 4 months later. I won't give the exact number because my NDA is specific, but I will say that it was enough to make the next decade of my life look very different than the decade before it. My attorney handled everything. She is extraordinarily competent, and I will recommend her to everyone I know for the rest of my life. The PE firm was straightforward. They wanted the client relationships, the proprietary frameworks we developed, and they wanted me to stay on for a 2-year transition. I negotiated the transition down to 18 months and got everything else I wanted. The week after closing, I bought a house in Asheville, North Carolina. I should explain that. My dad had a colleague who retired to Asheville about 10 years ago, and he used to come home from visits talking about it like it was a punchline. Hippies and artisan cheese and people who moved there because they couldn't hack it in a real city. I had gone once in my late 20s for a friend's bachelorette weekend and had driven through the hills outside of town and thought, I want to live here someday. It lodged in me. It's that specific, the things that lodge in us. The house is on 7 acres. It has a studio space that I've converted into an office, a wraparound porch that I use every morning without exception, and a view of the mountains that does something to my nervous system I cannot fully articulate. I paid cash. I didn't tell my family. About 5 months after I moved in, my brother called. I want to be clear about something. My brother and I have always been close, in the way that siblings are close when they're surviving the same environment. He knew about the company. He didn't know about the acquisition. I hadn't told anyone except my attorney and my best friend. But he knew I'd been building something, and he'd always been quietly supportive in the way that people are supportive when they can't afford to be publicly supportive, which is to say he never told our parents what he knew. So when he called, I answered. I was glad to hear from him. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing, catching up, and then he got quiet in a particular way. Mom's been having a hard time, he said. What kind of hard time? She's been, I don't know. Sad. She misses you. She keeps saying she hopes you're okay. I waited. She wanted me to call. She wanted me to call. She wanted to know if you'd be willing to talk to her. To both of them. I thought about my mother in the doorway, looking at the floor. I'm not ready for that, I said. I know. I told her that might be where you were, but He paused. Dad had a rough quarter. The firm lost a big client and it's affecting his equity position, and I think they're under more pressure than they're letting on. Mom mentioned they might need to refinance the house. There it was. I had known it was coming, not that specific detail, but the shape of it. The pattern was so familiar I could have drawn it from memory. Distance, then a soft reconnection, then the real reason. It is textbook. It happens in every family that runs this way, and I had watched it happen to other people and still felt the pull of it. The hope that this time would be different. This time, it was real. I hear you, I said. I love you. But I'm not the solution to their financial pressure. That's not what I'm available for. He was quiet for a moment. That's fair, he said. He meant it. I'm sorry she put me in the middle. Don't apologize. I'm glad you called. Call me next week and we'll actually talk. We did. We still do. He's the one relationship from that family that I've chosen to keep, and I've kept it carefully. With honesty, with actual terms, with the understanding that he doesn't carry messages for anyone, and I don't ask him to. 2 weeks after my brother called, my mother called directly. I almost didn't pick up. I stood there watching her name on my screen through 2 full rings, and then I answered because I knew that not answering was its own kind of decision, and I wanted to make the decision consciously. Sweetheart, she said. She was using her warmest voice, the one she uses with clients and with people she wants something from, and I felt the old, familiar pain of recognizing it. Hi, Mom. I've been thinking about you so much. I've been worried. Are you doing okay? I'm doing well, yeah. Do you have everything you need? Are you eating? She laughed a little, self-conscious. I know that's a mom question. I'm fine. I'm good, actually. Things are going well. A pause. She was recalibrating, I think. She had expected me to be more fragile. I'm so glad, she said. I've wanted to reach out for so long. I want you to know that what happened. I want you to know that I don't agree with how your father handled it. I want you to know that. I noticed she didn't say she disagreed with it while it was happening. She disagreed with it now, in retrospect, when the outcome had become unclear. I appreciate that, I said. I was hoping we might be able to see each other. I'd come to you, wherever you are. I miss my daughter. I looked out the window at the mountains. Early November, the leaves almost gone, the ridge line sharp and gray against a pale sky. It was very quiet out there. I miss you too, I said, because it was true. But I'm not there yet. I need more time. Of course. Too quick. Of course, whatever you need. I also wanted to talk to you about your father and I have been going through a bit of a difficult stretch financially, and I was hoping, Mom, just a bridge, just for a few months. Mom, stop. She stopped. I love you, I said, but I can't be the bridge. I'm not the solution here. Dad told me to stand on my own, and I did, and I'm standing. He needs to do the same thing. The silence on the line was a specific kind of silence, not angry, wounded, which is different and harder. That's very cold, she said finally. Maybe, or maybe it's honest. I paused. Call me in a few months. Not to ask for anything, just to call. I'd like that. She didn't respond to that. She said goodbye. She hung up. I set my phone on the porch railing and looked at the mountains for a long time. My dad called once, 6 weeks after my mother did. I know it cost him something to make that call. I know because I know him. Making that call was a loss in his ledger, and he keeps very precise accounts. He didn't apologize. I want to be clear about that. He started with pleasantries, which from him are so unusual they feel like a foreign language. And then he said he hoped things were going all right for me, and that he'd been thinking, and that perhaps he'd been too hasty. Too hasty, I said. You made choices I disagreed with, but you're my daughter. I let that sit for a moment. I'm glad you called, I said. I mean that. But I need you to understand something. What happened in that kitchen wasn't about the company or the MBA. It was about the fact that the moment I didn't fit the plan, you were done with me. That's what I'm sitting with. Not the argument, the speed of it. He was quiet. I don't need an apology right now. I'm not ready for one, and I don't think you're ready to give one. But I think if we're ever going to have a relationship that works, we need to both understand what the actual problem was. And the problem wasn't my business choices. More quiet. You sound like your grandmother, he said finally. It wasn't an insult. Coming from him, I think it was about the closest thing to a compliment he had available. I'll take that, I said. We talked for another 10 minutes. Nothing resolved. Nothing was supposed to resolve. It was the first conversation we'd had in over a year where neither of us was performing. That's not nothing. That's actually something. I don't know what comes next with my dad. I think about it sometimes, whether we'll find our way to something new, or whether the distance will just become the permanent weather between us. I'm not willing to pretend my way to closeness, but I'm also not interested in holding the wound open forever just to prove it happened. Some things take the time they take. I've been in Asheville for almost 2 years now. I consult part-time for a few clients I genuinely like working with. Nothing like the old volume, just enough to keep me sharp and interested. I've started doing things I told myself I'd do someday. I take a ceramics class on Tuesday mornings. I have a dog, a big, ridiculous brown mutt I got from the shelter whose name is officially Biscuit, but who I mostly call Bus for reasons I can't explain. I sit on the porch every morning without exception. I think a lot about what my dad said that day. You want to be an entrepreneur? Then be one, on your own. He meant it as a sentence. It turned out to be a permission slip, and I don't think he's fully reckoned with that. The thing about being pushed out is that sometimes the place you land is better than the place you were holding on to. Not always. Not without grief. But sometimes you look up and you realize you've been freed from a future that was someone else's idea of your life. And the thing that freed you was the very person who thought they were punishing you. My dad wanted me to be a partner somewhere. He wanted me to have a nameplate, a title, a clear position in a hierarchy he recognized. He wanted to be able to explain me to people at dinner. I understand that now in a way I didn't at 25. He wasn't wrong to want things for me. He was wrong about what the things should be. I can see the mountains from my desk. I worked for them. I like who I had to become to get here. That's enough. I've thought a lot about cause and effect, not in any cosmic or religious sense, just in the plain, observable way that choices stack on top of each other until they become a life. My dad made a choice in that kitchen. He chose certainty over curiosity. He chose the plan over the person. And I think, on some level, he believed that choice would correct me, that losing his approval would send me back to the path he'd drawn. What he didn't understand was that approval had never actually been what was holding me up. I've been building without it for 2 years already. That's the thing about integrity. And I mean it in the structural sense, the way a building has integrity, the way a bridge holds. When you do the right work in private, when you make honest decisions that no one's watching you make, you become load-bearing in ways you don't fully realize until someone tries to take the foundation out from under you and nothing falls. I didn't fall. I'd already built something that didn't need him to stand. But I want to be careful here, because I don't think the lesson is that I was right and he was wrong and that's the end of it. The harder truth is that I lied to him for 2 years. I made a rational choice. I believe the lie was less damaging than the confrontation. And I still think I was right about that. But I wasn't operating with full integrity either. I was protecting myself. I was protecting the company. I was not being brave. And I think about that. I think about what it might have looked like if I'd had the courage to say, at the end of that first semester, I'm leaving the program and here's why, and here's what I'm doing instead. Maybe the same thing would have happened. Maybe it would have been worse. But I would have been cleaner about it. Resilience, I've learned, is not the same thing as armor. Armor keeps everything out, the damage, yes, but also the information, the feedback, the relationships that could have recalibrated you. Resilience is different. Resilience is staying soft enough to feel what happened and hard enough to keep going anyway. When my mother called and used that warm voice, the one that was really a request dressed as love, I felt it. It hurt. I didn't harden against it. I let it hurt, and then I said no anyway. That's the practice. Not feeling nothing, feeling everything, and still making the honest choice. My dad wanted to explain me to people at dinner. I understand that better now than I did at 25. There is something genuinely painful about loving someone whose life you cannot make legible to the world you live in. That's not nothing. That's real. But the answer to that pain is not to compress your child into a shape that fits your vocabulary. The answer is to build a bigger vocabulary. He couldn't do that. Maybe someday he can. I'm leaving the door open without standing in it waiting. I have bus and the mountains and the ceramics class on Tuesday mornings and work I chose because I wanted it. I have my brother's number in my phone and an honest relationship with him that cost us both something to build. I have the version of myself that exists when no one whose approval I craved was watching. That version turned out to be the real one. I think that's what all of it was for.